It's me again, Lou. In the last episode, Naomi went crazy at me when she thought Jeremy had cheated on her with me. Then she took it too far and tried to destroy my reputation by locking me in my room so I wouldn't be able to take on the host role of the fashion show. Luckily, a mysterious stranger rescued me. All I knew was that he wore cufflinks with the letter M on them. After that, just when I wanted to give Naomi a piece of my mind, I saw her crying as she found out Jeremy was with another girl. I comforted her and we made up. Then we all went to Arkansas to Will's family's hunting ranch, and that was when I realized who had rescued me that night. Mark! I couldn't stop glancing at Mark's hand as we all ate. It all made so much sense. After the barbecue, Mark said he wanted to go to the observatory to get some fresh air. This was my chance. I waited a bit, and then I headed over there so I could thank him. When I got there, Mark glanced at me, but then he turned back and kept looking at the view. I took the cufflink out of my pocket and showed it to him. Then I smiled as I said, "So you're my knight in shining armor then? The one who saved me from Naomi's horrible prank?" Mark looked at the cufflink and then said to me, "What are you talking about? Listen, I don't have the time or energy to get involved in Naomi's stupid pranks." Although I was quite surprised by Mark's denial, I figured he was just shy. Then I said, "It's okay. Don't be shy. I just want to thank you." But before I could even finish my sentence, he'd walked away. All right, I know this guy's stubbornness. If he didn't want to admit it, I would not bring it up again. So I just smiled and put the cufflink back in my pocket and headed downstairs. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Mark. Why had he rescued me? I thought he was the worst when I'd first met him, but that night in Vegas, we'd had so much fun. But then he'd left me all alone. But then he'd rescued me. It was so confusing. He'd acted cold because he had some cool guy persona to keep up, but I could feel that underneath he was the sweetest, caring guy. And this just made me want to get to know him even more. Back at Plutus Heights, I felt closer to everyone after the trip. Alia was being particularly sweet to me, and one day she came to my room while I was working on a project. She looked sad and let out a big sigh as she said, "Lou, you gotta help me. I really need some advice." "What happened?" I asked her. Then she said, "My parents want me to marry the CEO of their partner company. They said it'll give our family more power and make us look good." She was almost crying as she told me this. I couldn't believe that in this day and age, there were still people arranging marriages like this, all for status and power. That's not how love works. What happened to freedom of choice? She was sobbing now as she told me the rest of the story. "This man has been chasing me for a while now. He often visits my parents' house, and I thought it was to see my dad. But now I realize it was because of me. It makes me sick. My parents keep saying I'll never have to worry about a thing because he's super rich. But he's 41. I don't want to marry some old rich guy." "What? He was like double her age. Alia was only 19. That was insane. What were her parents thinking?" I comforted her and asked, "Did you try telling your parents you're not interested?" She said, "I did. I tried everything. I begged them. But they insisted that I follow the family tradition, that a daughter's marriage should be chosen by the parents because they know what's best for her. Honestly, could my life get any worse?" Poor Alia. I felt so sorry for her. "Is there anything I can do to help?" I asked her. She looked at me through tears and said, "Really? You'll help me?" So I said, duh. We're friends, right? That's what friends are for." So then she told me she needed to find a guy who would pretend to be her boyfriend because she'd already blurted out to her parents that she was dating someone. Then she said, "My mom and dad want me to meet him this weekend to see if he's suitable enough for me to marry." "Have you found anyone yet?" I asked her. Then she said, "Nope, but I need someone good-looking, smart, and most importantly, he must come from a rich family. Out of our friends, the only one who ticks all of those boxes is Mark. And, okay, I'm going to be honest with you now. I've had a serious crush on him ever since I moved in here. So maybe this is my chance. I know it's so awkward to ask him, but you're in his investment club, and you two talk to each other quite often. So, can you go ask him for me? Please? Okay, I didn't like this idea one bit. Alia said she had a crush on Mark, huh? I weirdly felt so uncomfortable knowing this. Suddenly, I realized that I seemed to have a crush on him too. Ever since returning from the trip to Will's hunting ranch, he had always been the last person I thought about before falling asleep. But then, maybe it was just to trick her parents. And she was my friend. I had to help her, right? So, I told her I'd chat to Mark. Gosh, I'm a good friend. She was so happy and said, "Oh, Lou, thank you so much. Make sure he knows it's not for real. It's just a favor. He'll be saving my life." Okay, cool. So it was all just to please her parents. It wasn't real, and I had nothing to worry about, right? Alia had been such a good friend to me, so this was the least I could do to help her. The next day, on the way back from the investment club, my car stalled right in the middle of the road and wouldn't start. I had no idea what was wrong, so I had to call and get assistance. As I was on the phone, I noticed Mark's fancy convertible parked next to me.
"Get in the car,"
he said.
"I just called the towing service."
OMG, I couldn't believe it. Once again, he showed up just when I needed help. He really was my knight in shining armor. I got into his car, and there was this super awkward silence. Then I plucked up the courage to speak to him. "Mark, are you free this Saturday? I wanted to ask if you could do me a favor. Would that be okay?"
"I'm never free,"
he replied. "Oh, okay. I mean, I knew he was a very busy person, so it was stupid of me to have even asked him. But then he said,
"What do you need?"
"Oh, so he was giving me a chance." I then told him Alia's story and then nervously asked him if he'd pretend to be her boyfriend to impress her parents. I did not expect Mark to respond in the way that he did. He just laughed and said,
"How childish. Can't you think of a more convincing way? Alia should just prove to her parents that she was mature enough to make her own marriage decisions."
Alia tried, but it was hopeless. I put on my most persuasive face and stared at him with my puppy dog eyes all sad. This face always won my parents over, and I really hoped it would touch his heart too. He took one look at me and looked like he was about to laugh, but then he said,
"Fine, but just this one time, okay? I don't want to get caught up in all this immature love drama."
Yes! It had worked! Without even thinking, I reached over and gave him the biggest hug. I couldn't stop smiling. In a second, I secretly wished it was me who got to take him to dinner with my parents instead of Alia. Then, something crazy happened. Saturday rolled around, and Alia invited me to the dinner too. She thought it would make things less awkward because her parents already knew me, and I may help the conversation flow. Well, things didn't exactly go to plan. After only 10 minutes of sitting together, Alia's parents outright said that Mark didn't deserve Alia, that his family wasn't prestigious enough, and that they'd only gotten rich from investing in some land, and that it was just luck, not hard work or talent that had got them to where they were today. I looked over at Mark. His face was bright red, and I knew how much this was hurting him. For a guy with high self-esteem like Mark, this was just too much to bear. He immediately stood up and politely excused himself, then walked out of the restaurant. Alia got up to chase after him, but her mom grabbed her arm and stopped her, so I went instead. When I got outside, I tried to pull Mark's hand back, but he pushed me away and shouted,
"Are you satisfied? They just insulted my whole family. And what's wrong with being lucky? Just because they were lucky doesn't mean they didn't work their butts off to get there. My parents are the hardest working people that I know. No one insults my family like that. No one. Do you hear me? Now leave me alone. You and Alia, stay away from me."
"Mark, listen to me. Her parents didn't mean it like that. They're just blinded by their family tradition. They can't see past it. You're an amazing guy. Not many 19-year-olds work as hard as you do. You're so talented, and I admire you for this. Honestly, you're so inspiring." Mark just stared at me. Maybe, other than me, nobody had ever said that to him. Then, after a silent moment, he opened his car door and offered to drive me home. He was silent the whole way home, but after that evening, he acted differently around me. He'd always been kinda grumpy, but it was like he'd softened now and became more friendly to me. Every time I saw him, he smiled at me, and it made me so happy. He was also much more open to me. Our conversation not only revolved around the investment club, but we also shared our hobbies, family, dreams, and the things we wanted to achieve after graduation. The more we talked, the more I realized how talented and determined he was. His strictness in the club was actually how he trained himself and others to achieve their goals. That really made me admire him. And I'm not gonna lie, that admiration in me was slowly turning into a special feeling. Well, I think it could be love. As for Alia, after that incident, she apologized to me and Mark for getting us involved and said her parents were so traditional. Other than that, she never mentioned this crush she had on Mark again, and I felt relieved. At least I could comfortably hang out with Mark and dream of a further future between us without having to worry that it would upset Alia. And then one day, Mark asked me if I wanted to go to the grocery store with him to pick up some snacks for our Plutus Heights movie night. I happily agreed, and in the store, Mark suddenly turned to me and said,
"Can you hold this, please?"
I turned around to take whatever he was holding and said, "Sure, what is it?" Then he grinned and said,
"My hand."
In the middle of the store, he grabbed my hand and didn't let go. OMG! I couldn't believe it! This was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for me. I couldn't believe how much he'd changed. He was so cute. I blushed and held his hand tighter. In that moment, I'd never been happier, and I wanted Mark to be by my side forever. Stay tuned for Season 2, where the drama of Plutus Heights continues. Will things develop between Mark and I? Only time will tell.